I have accumulated a lot of books over the years, dating all the way back to when I was a young kid. Many of the books that I've accumulated I've never had a chance to read, mostly because I've always had other projects that I'd invest more time in, so I got behind. So, what I've decided to do is every month to start doing a video based upon a recent book project that I'm working on and kind of review briefly some of my thoughts and opinions on it. It's what I like to call Trojanpear's Book Club. This month we're going to start off with a series of books that I've read since I was a kid. This has spanned over a long period of time, and there's actually 7 books in this particular series. They're known as the Bunnicula Series. And the first book was called Bunnicula, followed by Holiday Inn, The Celery Stalks at Midnight, Nighty Nightmare, Return to Holiday Inn, Bunnicula Strikes Again, and finally, Bunnicula meets Edgar Allan Poe. The series is about a dog named Harold, who is the fictional author of the stories describing the adventures of his family, the Munros, and fellow companions Chester the cat, and later in the series, Howie the dachshund. The family finds a rabbit in a movie theater while watching Dracula, so they decide to call him Bunnicula. Everyone loves Bunnicula except Chester, who believes that the rabbit is really a vampire. This is because of several things, such as a Romanian note left with the rabbit when they found him, his vampire-like fangs, and his ability to drain vegetables of their juice and turn them white. There are actually more books than the 7 books that I showed you here that involve these characters. However, these 7 books are the 7 main books in the Bunnicula series. You'll notice that the series is written by James Howe. And these books actually span a total of 27 years from the first Bunnicula book to the last. 2006 is the most recent one, and the series all began in 1979, where you can see here that it's actually written by Deborah and James Howe. Now, this is the only one that is actually written by more than one person. Now, why is this the case? Well, the author's note actually explains why. So here in the first book, it says that James and Deborah Howe are husband and wife. Okay, well, we pretty much figured that, but maybe it could have been brother, sister, or something like that. So let's look at Holiday Inn, see what happened. Well, it says here that apparently his wife died. Wow. So that's what happened there. Let's just see what happens as we go further on. So now it says at the bottom there that he lives with his wife, Betsy, in Manhattan. So I guess he remarried. In Nighty Nightmare, again it says he's with his wife, Betsy, and now they have a daughter, Zoe. Let's see. Okay. Now, next book, lives with his wife, Betsy, daughter, Zoe, in New York. Okay. Same thing. Must not be much left. Now, if we can get this in pretty well, it says he lives in New York. don't see anything anywhere in here about his wife. So, don't know. Let's see what the last one has to say. Okay, it says that he lives in New York, shares his home with dog, cats, his partner, Mark. Wow. You can actually see in here how his life has progressed in these 27 years. That he actually starts off with his first wife, who dies shortly after the making of this book. Then he gets remarried, even has a daughter, and then all of a sudden you have the period where you don't see the wife, which could have meant he was divorced, could have meant nothing at all. But then in the very next book, you see that he has a partner, which means that he has to be gay. So that's quite an interesting story of just looking at the time period of his life. And I did look these things up just to be sure that I wasn't misinterpreting anything, and this is in fact the case. So, enough about the author, and let's look at the illustrations and then rank the books in this series. Alright, so we're talking about the cover art illustrations. And at 7th, I have Bunnicula meets Edgar Allan Poe. 6th is Return to Holiday Inn. Number 5 is Nighty Nightmare. Number 4 is Holiday Inn. Number 3, Bunnicula Strikes Again. All you gotta do is just look at it, and it's very cool looking with the lock up your artichokes up there at the top. Number 2, the original Bunnicula. But number 1 has to be The Celery Stalks at Midnight. This image is the most compelling image for me to have picked up the book, read the back, flipped through, look at the images inside, and just really draw a lot of interest in it. So the cover art wins on just the fact that it makes me want to pick up and look through the book. Alright, so we're going to do the overall illustrations inside the book. That's the pictures and drawings that you have inside. And this book, Nighty Nightmare, is 7th. It was the second book done by Leslie Morrell, who also did The Celery Stalks at Midnight. Number 6, Return to Holiday Inn. The Celery Stalks at Midnight is at number 5. Number 4, Bunnicula meets Edgar Allan Poe. Holiday Inn is at number 3. Some of the more memorable images. Some of the most memorable images by far are in this book, Bunnicula. Even though they're pretty basic images, but I do love them, and that's why it's number 2. But number 1 is Bunnicula Strikes Again. Part of it is Bunnicula Strikes Again, Bunnicula, and Return to Holiday Inn, done by Alan Daniel, who I think is the best illustrator of them all. So that's my ranking of these books in terms of illustrations. So when I was young, I had basically all 4 of the original Bunnicula books at about the same time, and I read them all pretty close together. I've read them multiple times over the years, and probably my opinions changed multiple times of which ones I enjoyed the most. But when the 5th book came out, Return to Holiday Inn, for many years I thought that was the last book in the series. But, to my surprise, about a year ago, I noticed working as a library volunteer that there was a book that was sitting in the display shelf. And it had a very familiar cover. And I wasn't reading it, I just saw the cover. And it reminded me of those childhood days where I was enjoying illustrations of a vampire rabbit. Well, of course, I was looking at Bunnicula Strikes Again, and as soon as I found this book and realized that there was a new Bunnicula book that had come out, I immediately purchased it and read it in about a day, and got into the whole Bunnicula fad again. And I decided, well, even though this book might be the last one, let's see if there are any more. So I looked, and sure enough, there was one more book called Bunnicula Meets Edgar Allan Poe. And I read this book, and I must say that I think Bunnicula Strikes Again should have been the last, but that's just because it felt like the last. It felt like it was set up to be the last. But then we added another one, which is fine. It was enjoyable. So now, having read all these books, I'm going to rank them 1 through 7 as the best in the series. So let's get started with that. Alright, let's start with number 7, Nighty Nightmare. This is actually the only book that I just really never felt was very good all the way through. I'd still give it a B, but compared with all the others, it is severely lacking. Number 6, Bunnicula Meets Edgar Allan Poe. I already mentioned the fact that I felt like this book was kind of a late add-on after Bunnicula Strikes Again, which I felt was one that should have been the last. But it was still a good entry, but only 6 overall when you compare it with the others. Return to Holiday Inn. This was a very good overall book, but just like the illustrations, there was a lot going on, and there really wasn't all that much time to develop things, so it was very rushed, it felt like. Number 4, Bunnicula, the original. It's a very good book. It's also the shortest book, and it's only got Harold and Chester in it. There is no Howie, which is alright, but the thing I always kind of didn't like about the stories was how nobody really seemed to understand, which makes sense, about Chester thinking the rabbit is a vampire and kind of looks foolish, which I never really liked that part. It's the same thing with number 3, which is Celery Stalks at Midnight, which is a good book. I really like Howie in this book, probably the best of all the books that he's in. But this book's a lot like Bunnicula in that the ending kind of has Chester looking foolish, which I never really liked how that turned out. Now, compare that with number 2, which is Holiday Inn, in which Chester is wrong, but he's not foolish because he does figure some things out. And this one's a lot more slowly paced. It is also the longest book at about close to 190 pages. So this one's definitely a really good one. And, of course, Bunnicula Strikes Again is number 1. When this book came out, it was just the culmination of everything that I remembered that was good from the old Bunnicula books. And the ending is a very satisfying ending. Has one of the great lasting images. As far as the illustrations at the end of the book, I absolutely love this book. But it is worth it, though, just to go ahead and start with any one of these earlier books and kind of go through the series in order before you get to this one, because it's like any of these old TV series. You know, this book is worth it when you go through the other books and you see that Chester versus Bunnicula relationship and you want to know how that relationship ends up. This is the book that finally concludes that, which is why I always thought this one should be the end. but it is clearly the best in the series. Alright, so overall, the entire series is kid-friendly, it's funny, and it's also enjoyable. Now, some books are better than others, but overall, the entire series is well worth reading. So, I would give the Bunnicula series an A. And so I highly recommend that you pick up all the books in this series and that you get it for yourself, for your kid, a friend, and get started reading. And until the next review that I have in Trojanpear's book club, this is the Trojanpear encouraging you to be a Readosaurus.